There is currently an SEC allegation against Richard Hart, and in this video, I'm going to explain to you what I think about it and why I'm not worried at all. Stick around to the end if you want to get my take on why I believe that me personally, as an investor in HEX and PulseChain, heavily invested into these projects, I'm not scared, okay? I'm not scared of this FUD, and I'm going to explain why for me personally, because I know a lot of people are scared out there. They hear SEC, they get very frightened, okay? I mean, it's a very legit thing to be concerned about because you don't know what this three-letter agency does, and the more we can demystify, what the SEC is all about, what they do, and what's actually going on behind the scenes here. Guys, I'm going to explain why these allegations are provably false, okay? They are actually false, and because I know that to be true, I am so much less worried because I have education and knowledge on my side. So I want to share that with you today. Stick with me through the whole video because I'm going to go over a lot of different topics today, and even if you hate HEX, even if you hate PulseChain, watch this video anyway, because a lot of people out there, they're haters, and they want HEX to fail. They want to see what their preconceived notions. They've already made up in their mind that HEX is a scam, PulseChain's a scam. It must be, right? There's absolutely no way. It's a Ponzi, it's a scam. They'll throw any words at all at it just because they don't own it, because at the end of the day, we're all just like sports teams, right? We're all just fans of our own different coins, and we want everyone else's coin to fail and our coin to succeed. Guys, that's a scarcity mindset, all right? This is a really... What's happening right now is an attack on all of crypto. So if anything, we need to stand united right now. We need to be against the SEC, who's harming every crypto investor. And if it's HEX one day, it's going to be your coin the next day. I promise you that. The Uniswap has just been investigated by the SEC. We all know what usually happens after an investigation, right? Usually a charge of some sort, usually a civil charge, because one thing I need to point out, guys, is the SEC is not a criminal agency. They don't report criminal offenses. They are a civil agency, so that's what the lawsuit for HEX is, for example. It's a civil case, the SEC versus Richard Hart in particular. Now, Richard Hart really could get hit by a bus tomorrow, knock on wood. I pray that doesn't happen, but he could be out of the picture altogether, and HEX would go on, PulseChain would go on, PulseX would go on. They do not require Richard Hart to survive. We're going to do more on that later. Right now, I just want to show you guys, look at all of the charges the SEC is doing against everybody, all the enforcement actions, all right? They're being entirely reckless, and what they're actually doing is they're harming all of crypto. They're harming all crypto investors, whatever coin you're in, whether you like Solana or Chainlink or Dogecoin, whatever. Because there's all this fear in the market that nobody wants to take any risks or do any innovations in crypto right now because they're just scared that the SEC is going to come after them, shut them down, whatever. But truly decentralized cryptocurrencies, guys like HEX and PulseChain, for example, they have no off switch, all right? They have no off switch, and that's what makes me so sure that we're going to be fine here. We're going to be okay. HEX will survive because it's an immutable blockchain with no off switch. Literally, it can't be shut off. It's a block of code. We're going to talk more on that later. I just want to show you, look at this Google page right here. Hide your kids, hide your wife, because they're suing everybody out here, guys. Justin Sun, Coinbase, a ton against Binance. They really don't like Binance because, it's a centralized company, and it's Chinese, quite frankly. They don't like it because it's Chinese. Beaxy, Bittrex, global Ponzi schemes, all kinds of things. And I could go on and on. They're trying to charge everybody just to send fear into the market because they are scared. They don't like crypto. They don't like crypto. And what they're doing is driving innovation out of the United States. And they're actually harming all of investors by hindering prices from growing as well. Because nobody wants to invest in crypto when they're all worried about the SEC. But what is the SEC really? What do they do? I'm going to give you some examples because, number one, like I mentioned earlier, guys, this code can't be shut off. PulseChain, no off switch. Richard's not even a primary developer in the PulseChain repository. But if he went away, there's tons of other developers that are still working on the PulseChain repository and maintaining that code. Now, HEX and PulseX, for example, they don't even need to be maintained. They're going to live whether or not the founder lives or dies or whatever. He can do whatever. And at the end of the day, there's a precedent that's been set for this kind of thing. And that's what I'm going to show you next. Stay tuned. What usually happens with these things is the SEC, being the corrupt agency that they are, they just want to get their money. And they just want to increase the size of their war chest. And they just want to sue somebody. And usually they get paid a settlement. And then it's business as usual. But on top of all this, we'll go into the SEC charges as well and show that they're all actually provably false. I mean, the misappropriation of funds accusation is really the most ridiculous. Stick with me here. Look at this right here, guys. Here's an example of charging entrepreneur Justin Sun and his companies for fraud and other securities laws violation. Blah, blah, blah. They actually charged all 8 of these celebrities. Okay, all 8 of these celebrities. Jake Paul, Lindsay Lohan. These guys, just to get out of this, they just paid a total of $400,000 to the SEC, and they got out of it. All right, so they just settled with the SEC because they didn't want anything to do with this. They're like, oh, I shilled Tron, whatever, but why are they coming after me for this? And then the head honcho, Justin Sun over here, he's actually got companies to go after, wholly owned companies. Look right here. The Tron Foundation Limited, BitTorrent Foundation Limited, Rainberry Incorporated. These are centralized entities that the SEC might have an easier time going after, unlike the HEX Richard Hart case, in which they're claiming that, look right here, guys, here's the HEX Richard Hart case, and here's the first part of it, right? They're claiming that he controls 3 unincorporated entities. So unincorporated here, that's really tough to go after because they're not companies, even though everybody wants them to be, because that's the status quo. That's the way things are in the traditional world. This is the crypto world, okay? These are just smart contract blocks of code that don't care who the founder was. They're just out into the world. They live on a blockchain. HEX lives on 2 blockchains now. And even the first sentence of this, the alleged controlling of these entities, he does not control them. He might have some coins, right? But owning coins is different than controlling the entities. I'll repeat that one more time. Owning more tokens than somebody else is different than controlling the entity, right? If I own a bajillion HEX, do I control HEX? No, I might be able to sell the price down a lot, but I can't turn HEX on or off. That's control, okay? So that right there is going to be tough for the SEC, but let's go back, okay? Let's go back. This is a civil case against Justin Sun because remember, they're all civil cases. The SEC is not a criminal agency. Now, if they find a lot of dirt on Justin after, getting more investigation into this was on March of 2023. So this one is relatively recent. March 22nd, 2023, they charged Justin Sun. Now, if they find more illicit activity going on with him, they can report that to the Department of Justice, which would then potentially do a criminal case, which could result in, worse things. But for the most part, all of these civil cases end up in paying a fine and business as usual. Let's all move on with our lives. The SEC gets paid and, the thugs, the gangsters get paid off and then you go about your day. That's what usually happens. If not, the SEC sometimes actually loses the case, like Ripple, which we'll talk about right after this. But this happened on March 2nd, 2023. Let's see what happened to the price, okay? March 22nd, 2023, the Tron price was 6.7 cents. Now the Tron price is 7.7 cents 5 months later. And this is in a bear market, guys. This is 5 months ago. Tron went up a little bit. Tron rose 12% in the last 5 months in a bear market. And look, I'm not saying Tron's a good coin. Tron's only ever done a 36x in its whole entire lifetime. Look at this, from all the way in the bottom. Tron started in 2017, so Tron is 6 years old. HEX is 3 years old, 3.5 years old, okay? Tron is 6 years old, and in its lifetime, really, it's had lackluster gains when you compare it to, Ethereum even, for example. It hasn't really even beat Ethereum. But all I'm trying to tell you is that it's survived, it's fine, and it's actually gone up in price since this SEC lawsuit, which a lot of people think matters a lot more than it does, right? Because they can't stop these coins from trading. Even a more centralized, technically centralized coin like Tron, it's really hard to shut these things off when they're traded on all kinds of different exchanges and there's all kinds of different developers contributing to the code. And smart contracts are the ultimate pinnacle of decentralization because they're immutable and they have no off switch. The platforms are slightly more centralized, but it's very hard to shut them off because look, can you really go and arrest every single developer and contributor that's contributed to open source code? That's just wrong. That sets a very bad look. For example, if the SEC went and tried to arrest, if the SEC somehow convinced the Department of Justice to go arrest every single developer at the Tron Foundation, that would scare the crap out of anybody trying to build in the USA. That would be such a bad precedent that you would literally drive the entire industry out of the USA, off to Singapore and other places, just to make an example and feel good. So they don't want to do that. All right? They don't want to do that. They just want to give the illusion that they have some semblance of control. And they're trying to apply these 90-year-old Howey test laws to a brand new cryptocurrency industry that's brand new. Okay, so they're applying something that worked for securities, and securities were based around centralized companies, whereas with crypto, you have smart contracts that aren't technically owned by anybody. And you've got a lot of quasi companies like foundations, for example, that are much different in their structure to classic company or security. So these should be categorized on their own in a different category. I actually think they should really be regulated by the CFTC as commodities, not as securities. But the SEC is really overstepping here, and people at the end of the day, they work at the SEC. They just want to get their promotion. They just want to go work for a bank and get paid more, climb up the corporate ladder, because they got their degrees at some Ivy League school. They're playing the financial game, okay? We're playing the crypto game. These are not bad people that work at the SEC. And at the end of the day, everybody just wants to make their paycheck, feed their families, maybe go work for JP Morgan, if they do a good job catching all the bad guys, or at least giving the illusion that they're, protecting investors, when in reality, they're doing the opposite. So that was Tron. Tron rose in price, right? Ripple had a multi-year settlement going on. Everybody knows about this one. They just finally settled with the SEC in this weird, we half won, half lost, but I'll chalk it up as a win. A win for Ripple is a win for all of crypto. So I'm very happy with the outcome here. Kind of made the SEC look a little bad there. But look, let's check out the price, right? Look at this. This is my tweet from the other day. Ripple still pumped 10x after the filing of the lawsuit. The filing was on December 22nd, 2020. And the settlement, or the judgment, just finally came out July of 2023. So that's 3 years later. Okay, 3 years later. But in that time, Ripple still pumped 10x. Okay, so the bull market doesn't care. At the end of the day, what I'm trying to say is, in the macro, when it comes to the price of these coins, we're just in a bear market right now. Okay, bull market, bear market. It's all about the mass sentiment of everybody. And wait 2 more months from now, the fact that the HEX, PulseChain, SEC news is so hot and fresh off the press right now, that is leading to a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt in people. But all these things, they come and they go, and the sentiment fades away over time. And these things get dragged out. And ultimately, like I said earlier, in the worst case, they result in a fine, a settlement fine. And in the best case, maybe the SEC actually rules, or the court rules, that HEX and PulseChain, rightly so, are not securities. And it really depends on what Richard wants to do in this case. He can, in my eyes, there's 2 options, right? Richard can choose to say, guys, I don't want to deal with this anymore. Just let's end this thing early after a couple months and let's settle this. I'll give you whatever, $30 million. Shut up, go away, stop bothering us. But what Richard could also do, a man with an ego like Richard's, he wants to win, right? He wants to prove a point. He might drag this lawsuit out for a couple of years and try to get a decision from the courts that HEX and PulseChain aren't securities. And there's a very good case to be made there. And it would actually make a lot of progress, in my opinion, in the legal realm. So that's basically 2 options. I don't see how this can long-term be negative for HEX, right? Or PulseChain or PulseX. Essentially, this is the lowest we can get right here. Okay, things cannot get much worse than this. If you're still here surviving, things cannot get much worse. Because look, the bull market's going to come back. No one's going to care about, the FUD of the month. And this is really the FUD of the month. And people are always going to bring it up. The haters are always going to bring it up. Like, oh, what about the SEC lawsuit? Look, if it scares you too much to have an SEC lawsuit looming over your head, then you shouldn't be here. Then maybe sell and go away. I'm not trying to convince anybody to buy the coins or not. I'm just telling you why I am not worried at all. These things survive. They keep functioning. The SEC is not like a bunch of guys that bust someone's door down and turn Richard's computer off. And then all of a sudden, oh no, HEX is shut down. That's not how crypto works. That's not how real crypto works. Right? It's decentralized. It's run on a blockchain. It can't be shut off. I'm going to hammer that point home a lot in this video. It cannot be shut off. So look at this point I wanted to make on Ripple too. The difference with HEX and Ripple is that 90% plus of HEX's volume was traded on decentralized exchanges, the way crypto was supposed to be. So if you want to buy HEX or you want to buy PulseChain, it's all decentralized for the most part. Yes, you have to use a fiat on-ramp to get your money in and out, and those are the choke points at the end of the day, but once you're in the crypto ecosystem, you can buy these things in a decentralized way. Ripple was listed on centralized exchanges, which it was then delisted from, which actually hurt them a little bit more because there were less ways to get Ripple. Now, I know Ripple had a decentralized exchange as well, but Ripple does barely any volume compared to Uniswap, right? Ripple's DEX, and I'm not even sure if Ripple had a DEX at the time the lawsuit launched. I don't know the specifics. But on top of all this, I just want to say PulseChain and HEX have many more fiat on-ramps worldwide. You should have seen when HEX launched, guys. HEX launched at the end of 2019. Basically, we can call it beginning of 2020. There was almost no way to get HEX, okay? And HEX did a 10,000x with no centralized exchange listings, everybody hating it. It became a very polarizing thing, but the bull market didn't care. We pumped 10,000x based on pretty relatively low liquidity and decentralized trading, which is a good thing. That's where you want your cryptos to be. Now when I look around, I look at the PulseChain ecosystem, I see so many different on-ramps. I see so many different things going for PulseChain, right? Look at all these over here. There's all these Ethereum DEXs over here, right? There's all these different mining front ends. We've got all these different on and off ramp tools. We've got OKX, Kanga. These are exchanges in, Asia, Singapore, and this covers a lot of the East. It's the top 3 exchange worldwide. Okay. I mean, if you're an American, you got to realize there's more to the world out there. The SEC is American, but people don't care. People are still going about their business. Kanga is in Europe, it's in Poland, and they're serving a lot of Europe. Change Now, Let's Exchange, Gardarian.com. All of these websites are offering on-ramps and crypto exchanges into the PulseChain, into the HEX ecosystem. They're not stopping. We're just building more and more. 0xcoast.com is a fiat on and off-ramp directly into the PulseChain ecosystem. Just launched last week. It just launched last week. Guys, people are not stopping building. The on-ramps aren't going away. And I'm just trying to make this point that, the builders are not scared of this. I know a ton of other people that are still building. I mean, there's so many good projects that are forks of solid Ethereum projects. You've got PHUX, it's a balancer fork. You've got Fame, it's a GMX fork. You've got Liquid Loans, it's a fork of the Liquidity protocol on Ethereum. We're taking everything that works on Ethereum and copying it over to PulseChain and making it better. And the builders are still building. That's what I really want to drive home. People aren't delisting PulseChain and HEX. I mean, you might hear the FUD about Uniswap delisting. They didn't really delist HEX, okay? They delisted it from their front page website. And now you could buy it at all of these other websites. Any Uniswap front end will do, because the real Uniswap smart contract can't delist HEX. Only the website front end can delist HEX. All right, so a lot of FUD over there. And also, but going back to Ripple too, I just want to point out that Ripple did a 10x with the SEC lawsuit looming over them, but it's on its third cycle, right? Ripple, it's even older than Tron. Tron's from 2017. Ripple goes back to 2013. So Tron is 6 years old. Ripple's 10 years old. And HEX is only 3 years old. PulseChain is 3 months old. So it's really about just the newness of a project, the immutability of it. Can anybody shut them off? No. And then what you got to ask yourself as an investor is this: what's the ratio of future people that will hear about it to people that have heard about it now? It's really just a time thing. All the opportunity for the price appreciation is generally in the first couple of years of a project. And as more and more people know and enter the ecosystem, a lot of the gains are diminishing in returns over time. But the fact that Ripple still did this is impressive to me, right? With a DEX that does, barely any volume. I don't even know if they had a DEX back then. They were delisted everywhere. It seemed really bad. But Ripple was fine. These decentralized protocols, they live on. The SEC doesn't go in and press the off button. There's not like some giant Xbox that they just go in and they shut it off. And, oh, Ripple's dead now. It doesn't work like that. So what usually happens with SEC lawsuits, okay? They usually order somebody to pay a fine, all right? Here we have SEC orders blockchain company to pay a $24 million penalty for unregistered ICO. This happens a lot, all right? Now, this is a blockchain company. Remember, HEX is not a company. PulseChain is not a company. I don't work for HEX Incorporated. I don't go to my job every day and take the train over to the HEX building and go say hi, to Bill at the coffee stand on my lunch break. So this was the SEC actually settling with Block One, which was the company behind EOS. EOS was they raised $4 billion in a good old-fashioned ICO. They got a slap on the wrist, and then they were allowed to continue to exist because, quite frankly, it's too hard to shut off. You might launch centralized like EOS did. They launched a centralized ICO. Money clearly went to one specific place, and there was a promise that something would exist, right? HEX launched complete, by the way. HEX didn't raise money beforehand. HEX was nothing, and then HEX was there. There was no money taken beforehand. Kind of fails the Howey test there, right? But they had to pay $24 million penalty, and then at the time they paid this penalty, right? EOS was already out in the wild. And because it can't be shut off, it's still out there. It's still on a bunch of exchanges and still trading to this day. So here's another thing about the SEC Tron founder. These are the 8 celebrities. Look, 6 of the 8 celebrities paid $400,000. Divided by 6 people, 6 rich celebrities, that's not that much at the end of the day. They paid the SEC $400K to basically say GTFO, SEC, we don't want any part of this. And then Justin Sun, the founder, is still under the lawsuit. They're still litigating, right? But these things take months, if not years, depending on when people want to settle. And we'll see if Justin, like Richard Hart, if they want to take the SEC all the way till decision time, they can do that, but they could probably settle early too. So guys, look at everything that the SEC is calling a security, right? You've got Air Token, Algorand, Dash, Filecoin, Internet Computer. These are popular mainstream cryptos that people, the kind of mainstream influencers have all been shilling. So nothing is really safe from the SEC out here, and it's all down bad. All the prices are down, and the SEC is going after everybody. But it's going to be fine, because as long as these things are truly decentralized, we'll see what gets actually shut off. But if something can be shut off, then it's not real crypto, right? Luna, well, that's a unique case right there. Polygon, Tron, Voyager, XRP, Solana. These are popular crypto coins that the SEC has all alleged that are their securities. They're in violation of the Howey test. So yeah, most of the time what I'm trying to say is that when cryptos are alleged to be securities, they just settle. Okay, they settle. Now, the SEC is a civil agency, not criminal. What does that mean? Again, I want to be very clear why they're not so scary as people think. The SEC's powers are restricted to civil suits, although the SEC can share information obtained in an investigation with criminal prosecution authorities. Now, Richard didn't do anything criminal, okay? If anything, he violated a security law, and I'm going to tell you why that's probably not true. So if they refer you to the DOJ, that's the worst case scenario, and this is just not even an option to me. Like, I don't see this happening at all, because the SEC's basically collected as much information as they can. They've already done an investigation on HEX, and what they found essentially is a bunch of information that's quite frankly not true. Like, we can look at the SEC complaints. You go over to the press release right here, click on SEC complaints, and we could pick out all kinds of flaws in this 27-page document of Richard individually versus Securities and Exchange Commission. All right. Now, the Howey test is used to determine if something's a security or, not. And it's got to pass all 4 legs. So all 4 of these things have to be true for something to be a security. It's 1, there's an investment of money. 2, into a common pool. 3, with the expectation of profit. 4, solely derived from the work of others. All right, all 4 of those things have to be true, and they're clearly not, especially for things like HEX, which are very easy to disprove, where, HEX launched fully complete. There were no promises of work from others, because how can there be? If you're not asking for money, the product was delivered, and it entered a launch phase, and then people voluntarily chose whether or not to buy it during the launch phase. But it already existed, right? That's the important part. So if any one of these legs fails, right, and there's cases to be made, lawyers are going to talk about this all day. Lawyers are going to flap their lips. The lawyers are getting paid on this no matter what. All right, that's the thing about these lawsuits. They're going to argue over the definition of various words. I would say HEX is just objectively not a security. And PulseChain and PulseX too, right? PulseChain and PulseX are sufficiently decentralized. And the really important thing here is that Richard never made promises of future work. Now, other people might have had expectations in their head because they made them up in their head and they told themselves a story. But Richard never actually explicitly made these promises that he was going to do anything. That's why he used words like sacrifice phase. People sacrificed for PulseChain, sacrificed for PulseX, without expectation of profit from the work of others. That part right there is very critical, and they're going to have a very hard time in court proving that there was expectations of profit, especially when you start to read this thing and you say, okay, Hart operates through 3 unincorporated alter ego entities. So unincorporated right there. They're not even businesses, okay? He operates through them. That's false in the first sentence. He doesn't operate through HEX, PulseChain, and PulseX. He operates as an individual. HEX, PulseChain, and PulseX, they operate with or without him. They operate on their own. That's the point I'm going to keep drilling home. When you realize that this is unstoppable code, decentralized, immutable, these just live on the internet, okay? These are just networks of computers. PulseChain's a computer network, okay? There's 35,000 people, 35,000 validators all over the world validating the PulseChain network. Ethereum's got 200,000 or something crazy. So you can't just turn off 35,000 machines. You can't turn off 200,000 machines all at once, all right? And HEX and PulseX specifically, these are smart contracts that live on top of the blockchain. They live on top of PulseChain. And HEX also lives on top of Ethereum. So these are isolated away in the sense that there's nobody, again, that can go in and change the rules of the code. There's no off switch on these things. PulseX is just a fork of Uniswap, guys. Uniswap is decentralized. HEX is more than decentralized, okay? It's about as decentralized as you can get. So look, they're alleging that he raised money in illicit securities, unregistered securities, right? Unregistered securities. So three charges that HEX, PulseChain, and PulseX are unregistered securities. But also, the most foolish thing to me is that whoever made this complaint made some really incorrect assumptions that Richard also may have misappropriated funds. Let's go back here. Misappropriation of funds, $12 million for purchasing luxury goods like sports cars, watches, and a black diamond. If you guys know Richard, you know he was already rich. He was a retired multimillionaire at the age of 25. And then he also mined full Bitcoin blocks in 2011. So he's a Bitcoin 9-digit millionaire. All right. Hundreds of millions of dollars this man has. Allegedly. I haven't counted his wallet. I don't know. And that's not my job. But to be able to buy a bunch of sports cars and diamonds and stuff for someone that's got, let's say, $500 million in the bank, spending, $20 million on flashy stuff to get attention, which is what he was doing. That's not misappropriation of funds. And this is going to be the easiest thing to disprove that's provably false is you just look on the blockchain, man. You just show me the transaction hash. Show me on the blockchain where the coins were sold. You look at the origin address of HEX. You look at like the origin address of PulseChain and PulseX, right? Or the sacrifice address, rather. You can see that they haven't sold a single damn coin. They haven't sold a single coin, all right? So no coins have ever been sold from the money, quote unquote, raised in these things. So it's very, very easy to disprove the fraud, the misappropriation of funds allegation, right? All Richard would have to do is go to the court and say, look, here's my receipt for the Ferrari. Here's my receipt for the diamond. Notice how it came from my bank account, personal bank account. And it did not come from the blockchain ledger. How do we know? Well, we don't know what Richard's bank account looks like, but we know that the funds for HEX and PulseChain and PulseX are on the blockchain, publicly viewable by anybody, and they haven't moved. They haven't been sold. So this is going to get thrown out really quick. All right, misappropriation. What they're really going to end up arguing about is the unregistered securities arguing. Again, the lawyers are going to flap their lips all day. They're going to argue about, what's the definition of sacrifice, why sacrifice does not count as, having expectations. They'll go over all the countless examples of Richard Hart saying you should have no expectations. They'll go into the disclaimer on the website saying, you should not have expectations of profit from the work of others. And it might take some time, right? And again, there's two options that I see happening. One, Richard settles early, basically pays an extortion fee to the corrupt SEC. It says, leave me alone, I'll pay the fee. Or two, which might be more likely, Richard goes for the glory. He drags us out for a year or two, and he gets all the way to decision time and forces the SEC and the court to rule that HEX, PulseChain, and PulseX are not securities objectively, so that nothing else can really happen again in the future. So guys, when you look at these unincorporated entities, right, and it says that, not only the misappropriation of investor assets, that's laughable to me, the misappropriation thing, but we look at this SEC complaint, right, and it says he operates these entities, these unincorporated entities. I want to focus on just dismissing this whole case right here, because look at the GitLab page. Okay, this is the PulseChain GitLab. These are all the different people that are working on PulseChain. It's not like Richard's the mastermind, single guy. There is no single point of failure here. And again, if Richard got hit by a bus, knock on wood, PulseChain would be just fine. Look at the team here. There's tons of different developers, like at least 20 over here, right? 15, 20 maybe. And then you've got the actual members of the core repository. These are the core members of the GitLab, basically the creators of the GitLab. Look at Richard Hart right here. He's a direct member created by the actual owner, which is this random guy, SJB, whatever. Okay? So look, these two guys were probably the original creators of the GitLab, right? But you can see that if it comes to a technical point, if this needs to be brought up in court, Richard Hart was made a direct member by a different owner. So he was made an owner by a different owner. Again, Richard Hart could be deleted from this repository, and these guys would just own and maintain and develop the code. And even if they somehow all went away, you have this huge team that would pick up the slack that would maintain and develop the code. It's the same thing with Ethereum, right? Ethereum only has 5 main developers that are on the GitHub, okay, that are actually developing Ethereum. So it's true, right? Like there's only 5 people on the core repository, but there's tons and tons of contributors, right? There's contributors, there's team members. But again, Richard is not the main owner. That's the most important point to make here. Now, I'm not a lawyer. I know, got to say that, but the main point I'm trying to make here, guys, is that if Richard went away, Richard is not the sole operator of this GitLab repository, and this is only for PulseChain. When it comes to PulseX and HEX, there are no owners, okay? Let me show you what PulseX and HEX are. Here we're on Etherscan, okay? This is the HEX token right here on Etherscan. Anybody can go to this website. You just look up HEX on etherscan.io. You scroll down. You got the audit report, and this is the code, okay? Here is the HEX code. This is what HEX is, okay? It's hard to imagine, like, people want so badly for there to be a centralized owner, a centralized company, but it doesn't fit in the framework of traditional finance or traditional companies, all right? You need to not think about that. You need to think in a totally different way when it comes to crypto assets, all right? You see these lines of code right here? There's about 3,000 lines of code. It's just code, and there's no single owner. In this code, you will find no owner. You'll find no admin key. Nobody can shut or change the code or do anything to the code. This is all HEX is right here. All this code. That's all HEX is. So when you say, he operates these unincorporated entities. He doesn't operate them at all, okay? He might be a partial contributor to PulseChain, but if he went away, if Richard Hart went away from this, it would survive. It would be just fine. It would keep getting developed by, the other guys. And again, HEX and stuff like that, HEX and PulseX, they don't need updates. PulseX looks the exact same as this. It's just a chunk of code, and it's copied from Uniswap. And what is Uniswap? Well, at the end of the day, Uniswap, the company, is different than the Uniswap code. And so PulseX is just a clone of the Uniswap code with some modifications. Uniswap v2. All right. So that's what's going on, guys. That's what's going on. And no one's stopping building here. Like I said earlier, people aren't stopping. All right. People are building all kinds of stuff. There's more on-ramps than there ever have been before. More front ends, more dexes. There's dexes both on the Ethereum side, and then you've got the dexes on the PulseChain side at pulsex.com. And you've got dex.hex.toys as a backup. There's plenty of other backups too, like gopulse.com. Guys, at the end of the day, all this complaint is just from some salty guy out there that doesn't want to take responsibility for their own actions, right? This SEC complaint at the end of the day comes from people complaining that they lost money. How did they lose money? HEX has had 100% uptime. It's been around with no hacks, working flawlessly. Same with PulseChain, same with PulseX. So how could anybody have gotten harmed? Well, the same way they can get harmed on any other asset. If you buy something high and you sell it low, and you don't want to take responsibility for yourself, you want to point fingers and say, Daddy, SEC, help me. Somebody push the sell or buy button for me. That's not a legit way to say that you got scammed. All right, you got to grow up. You got to take accountability for your own actions. If you bought something high and sold low, that's on you. Okay, so you're not a victim of Richard Hart. You're a victim of yourself, and you're a victim of your inability to be patient, because the money goes from the hands of the impatient to the hands of the patient. Time in the market beats time in the market. And for everybody wanting to be the overnight billionaire success story in crypto, and you're mad that you didn't get to become a millionaire in 1 or 2 years, you got to hang in there for longer than that. Okay, that's not how this game works. It's what I like to call a get rich slow scheme, but it still kicks the 401k's ass, right? Anyway, people buy things high and sell low all the time. And look at all these other coins, right? Look at all these mainstream coins. Remember we were talking about the mainstream coins earlier? Look at all these, like Solana, right? This is one that everybody loved back in the bull market. Everybody hated HEX, but everybody loved Solana. It doesn't matter, because guess what? HEX actually it pumped harder. HEX went up more than Solana. But everybody loved Solana because it was the popular thing to do. Everybody had their confirmation bias met. They were going to Solana conferences and signing deals with everybody. It was all Sam Bankman-Fried and FTX related. Look, it's down 90%, guys. It's down 90%. So if you bought the top of Solana and you held it down to 90%, negative 90%, does that make it a scam? Not necessarily, just because you bought high and sold low. Maybe for other reasons, right? But if you bought something high and sold it low, we're all in the same boat here is what I'm trying to say. All of crypto is in the same boat. It doesn't matter if you like HEX or if you hate HEX, if you love or hate PulseChain, or it doesn't matter if you love or hate Richard Hart, because again, these things live without him, okay? But look, Solana was as low as 96% down, almost 97% down at one point. Now it's sitting at 90% down. So crypto is literally a game where people that are down 90% start laughing at people that are down 95%. And people that are down 85% are all laughing at the people down 90%. We're all down bad, guys. And we need to stick together and realize that it's the SEC, it's the powers that be that are the real enemy here, okay? It's not us versus each other. We're cannibalizing each other here. Look at all the Dogecoin guys, right? Let's say you're a meme coin guy. You like Doge. Well, if you bought the top of Doge and you held it till today, you are down 88%, okay? Is Dogecoin a scam? No. If you buy something high and sell it low, you don't get to just call something a scam and then have tell the SEC to go after him. There's no case there. There's no case to be made. How about Chainlink? Chainlink's a popular one. Everybody likes that stinky linky, right? The Chainlink army. And respect to Chainlink, right? I'm not mad. I like all these coins. They're all fine, okay? But look, if you bought the top, sold low, down 90%. Where are you today? Down 85%. But at the low, you were down 90%. That's pretty bad, right? If you bought the actual top. Now, a lot of people didn't buy the top, but they bought somewhere around the top. How about Filecoin? Filecoin's a big popular one. Filecoin was going to be the future of finance, right? It's going to be great. Everybody loved it. Boom, down 98%. Oh my God, 98%? Yeah. And at one point it was down almost 99%. Yep, 99%. Now, is Filecoin a scam? No. You might be angry that you lost money, but that's your responsibility for when you press the buy and the sell button. And maybe if you want to hold longer, maybe the bull market will come back. I think it will. I'm convinced that, they're going to print money again one day. You just got to hold and be patient until that day. And I know it sucks to hold and wait, but just because you bought Filecoin doesn't mean you get a valid complaint to just say, oh, SEC, come save me, right? That's very It's just sad and pathetic, right? Like, it's so sad and childish to just want somebody else to be responsible for your individual thoughts and mistakes. Here's another one, Avalanche. Okay, Avalanche was kind of popular. A lot of people might like that one. Down 91%. I'm not here to pick on any of these coins. I'll even talk about BSV, right? I don't have anything really against anybody. If you're a fan of any of these coins, BSV, at the top till now, down 92%. And at the low, it was down 97%. Okay, 96%. We're all down bad. That's my only point that I'm making here. Okay, so what am I trying to say? There are no victims. Okay, if anybody is a victim here, you're a victim of your own self-interest. You're a victim of your own greed and short-term thinking. But there are no victims of the HEX PulseChain community. When you look at everybody hating on PulseChain and HEX online, and they're saying, oh, look at the SEC, haha, they're trying to dance on our graves, right? Well, look at all the real haters. Those guys never actually bought or held PulseChain and HEX to begin with, okay? What I see when I go on social media, I see a lot of the community, they're celebrating, they're doubling down on their beliefs, they're going harder, they're building, they're making more content. Your friend Somi is making content like a machine, just pumping out videos every single day. We're trying to get the point across here, okay? And it's an all of crypto fight. This is all of us versus the SEC. And when you look at HEX and PulseChain, there's nobody saying, I'm a victim. Maybe there's one or two guys, right? Like there's a couple salty guys that lost money. Again, they bought high, they sold low. They complained to the SEC, but clearly the information that the SEC gathered, especially the misappropriation of funds thing, guys. The misappropriation of funds thing is what tells me that, the information that they got was just bunk information, right? Whatever complaints were made to the SEC were just not true. And it also tells me that the SEC didn't really do much of their due diligence of following up and trying to prove the misappropriation of funds. It looks like what the SEC did is they took a complaint from some random dude who said, hey, Richard, used my money to buy a diamond. And it looks like that's as far as they went. And they said, oh, well, look at this guy. He's all flashy online and he did create these cryptocurrencies and he's being all flashy. So let's put two and two together. I know how it looks, guys. I know how it looks, and I can't say I blame the SEC here necessarily for thinking that, but they're jumping to conclusions there, right? And with just a little bit of blockchain analysis, you could prove that to not be true. Just the tiniest little bit of looking at the coins in, the origin address or whatever, and saying, yeah, they've never been sold. So, yeah, Richard probably paid out of his own pocket for the Ferrari and the Lambo and the Gucci and all that stuff, because you're a multimillionaire already. All this stuff is really not that much money relative to your total bank account, right? So it's really hard in the HEX and PulseChain case to find any victims. Look, my bags are down 90%. Am I a victim? No. I take responsibility for my own actions. I take responsibility for buying HEX, for buying PulseChain. I am not a victim of Richard Hart in particular, okay? You know who I feel victimized by is actually the SEC themselves. I feel like we're all kind of victims of the SEC because when this press release was launched, the price of PulseChain and HEX dropped 50%. So my net worth got cut in half because of the SEC, not because of anything that Richard did. So in fact, I feel more victimized by the SEC, who is ironically supposed to be protecting investors. So I'd like to end on this note of what can we do about this, right? Well, what we can do is just get the good word out there, speak the truth, do what I'm doing now, tell people what's really going on, right? What's really going on. If you just spend some time to do a little bit of research and look under the hood, you'll find that the SEC really has no case here. Okay, but another thing we can do is you can go here to the press release about the SEC and HEX, and at the bottom it says, look, please submit a tip at the SEC Gov. You can click on this, and here's where people would normally report suspected fraud or wrongdoing. But look right here. Observe what they say. We strongly encourage the public, whistleblowers and non-whistleblowers. You can go be a non-whistleblower. If you like HEX and PulseChain and you want to stand up to your bags, stand up for yourself and really say how you feel, you can submit a tip here and say, look, I am not a victim of Richard. And maybe you made some money, right? Maybe you want to say, hey, I'm actually very happy with how HEX and PulseChain have been going. And I want to clarify some things about how HEX and PulseChain are sufficiently decentralized. And also, furthermore, I'd like to say that the only person I feel victimized by is the SEC themselves. And the SEC is actually harming me as an investor rather than protecting me as an investor. So that's how I feel. Don't you think there's something a little wrong going on here? And you have the power to do this by submitting a tip. Now, guys, be respectful, okay? If you're submitting a tip to the SEC saying, hey, I'm not a victim, I'm a victim of you guys, of anything, be respectful, be cordial, be professional, okay? Don't act like you behave on Twitter, calling them names and stuff like that. That's not going to look good, Okay, if you go in there and submit a tip and say, F you, SEC, blah, 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 and you got caps lock turned on, no. Be a professional human being. This is a legitimate agency. These are legitimate people. But if you want to describe the truth of what's going on, you have the power to do this. We, the people, have the power to say when we feel like we've been treated unfairly. And we don't feel like we've been treated unfairly by Richard. We feel like the SEC is not only treating HEX and PulseChain unfairly, but Coinbase, Kraken, EOS, Tron, they're coming after everybody, right? And just because they haven't come after your coin specifically yet, might I refer you back to this page of everybody that's on the potential chopping block. You know, if you like one of these coins, it could be you with an SEC case over your shoulder next, right? Now, again, it's not the end of the world to have one of these SEC cases. The coins go on. If they're decentralized, they're going to survive. But this is what you can do. Speak your truth into the world. Speak truth to power. Get out there and explain how you're not a victim of HEX or PulseChain. If anything, you're a victim of the SEC. Explain and educate your friends about real cryptocurrency, about what decentralization really means. Educate your friends that HEX, PulseChain, and PulseX have no off switch, and that's the most important thing to realize at the end of the day. Whatever happens with this case, the products are going to survive, and the price is going to do just fine in the bull market, because when the bull market comes back, guys, everything pumps and dumps together. Okay, I just showed you over here, right? Everything is down, and it's, again, we're down 95%. All these guys are down 90%, 98%. Everything's down. Okay, it's bull and bear market sentiment. But you need to join the fight for freedom of speech and freedom of movement. You need to join the fight against your oppressors. Okay, speak truth to power. Tell people what's going on. Educate them. Because when the central bank digital currency comes, guys, we need different options. We need an alternative, parallel financial system that's real crypto. That's real crypto. So join the fight for all of crypto, not just for HEX and for PulseChain. And again, everything you do matters. You might say, oh, I'm a nobody. I'm just a random guy on Twitter. Every little thing you do to speak your reality into existence, every little thing you do matters. Whether you're making a YouTube video, writing a blog article, just educating the public, telling your friends and family it's going to be okay, we're all going to be fine, explaining to the SEC maybe, writing a letter to your congressman, writing a letter to the SEC perhaps. These are all options of things you can do. And you have a lot more power than you think you have. And again, these are decentralized, guys. Richard Hart does not own the protocols. He might own the coins, he might own a lot of coins, but owning the coins is different than owning the protocol. Sure, you could dump a bunch of coins. Yes, Satoshi could dump 1 million Bitcoin. Does Satoshi own Bitcoin? No. Satoshi founded Bitcoin. And then he left and he went away and nobody knows who he is, right? But Satoshi mined 1 million Bitcoin in the early days, and he was the only one that mined. He basically pre-mined them before anybody knew about Bitcoin. And somehow nobody talks about that. Now, are they going after Satoshi? You know, is the FBI trying to look up who Satoshi is? No, they don't seem to care. But it's a double standard here, right? So how come some anonymous guy can get away with mining 1 million Bitcoin for himself? And if he's still alive somewhere, he could dump those Bitcoin at any time. And yes, that would hurt the price. Just like if the origin address dumped all the HEX, of course, yes, it could hurt the price. Why would it want to do that? It wouldn't, okay? That's just a silly argument. But again, what I'm trying to say is owning the coins is different than owning the protocols. Satoshi can't shut off Bitcoin just because he owns 1 million Bitcoin, right? The code's maintained by a whole bunch of developers who at this point, that's not even Satoshi anymore. Which means I wouldn't be surprised that if one day Richard was not even a member of this GitLab anymore, and it was entirely owned by alternative people. You know, Richard's not even a developer, right? Richard's not a developer. He's more of just the founder, okay? These other guys in here, I would guess, are the people making all the commits to the code, you know, doing all the actual work. Richard's not doing any of the commits to the code. So don't worry, we're in real crypto the way it was supposed to be, real decentralized crypto. Guys, if you found this video valuable, like, subscribe, share, comment. It all helps the algorithm. It helps pump your own bags. It takes 2 minutes. Like, sub, share, leave a comment, and just know that when the bull comes back, it's going to be okay. I know this part sucks. This is really the hardest part, but if you have conviction in your bags, if you realize that this thing cannot be shut off, that is why I personally believe that the SEC will lose the case, number one. And number two, I know all these products will be fine in the future. They're going to survive. And I do believe personally that when the bull comes back, that all three of these things are still going to pump in price. I am speculating, like everybody else, that these products are all going to do amazingly well in the bull market. I'll see you on the next video.